Our next subject, with the help of the Lord, is connected with our subject, divorce and remarriage, but now specifically in the writings of Ellen G. White. And let us consider, because of the time, one specific book. So, The Adventist Home, that was compiled in 1952, is one of the emblematic books that create a completely chapter about a divorce. And we wish to research the content, the sources, the dates, and also the personalities involved in this documentation. But before we do that, we wish to read the foreword that the Ellen G. White Estate publishers write as a foreword of the book, because the principles that they establish, we will see how in the book, unfortunately, we don't find the evidences of these criteria, and we will prove it that. But let us read it first. So the first element that is very clear presented since the beginning is that the Adventist Home is a compiling work and is done from the excerpts from the different writings of Sister White that covered approximately 7 decades. So that is extremely important for us to understand. So Sister White was no more alive, and the combination, the compilation, the selection of the content was completely out of her control. And we are going to do that during our investigation here. So the Ellen G. White Estate's publishers confirm the principles that they follow in order to establish this compilation. So, as the excerpts drawn from different sources written at different times are linked together in the logical sequence. So we have here already a challenge that is significant, especially because the content covered approximately 70 years. They are coming from different sources, written at different times, and they take upon themselves the right to put it together in the so-called logical sequence. So that is important for us to follow these criteria during the study of one specific chapter. And it's interesting because one of the closing statements in the foreword says, for the content, she say, related with Sister White, instruction that the Lord has given me for his people. That is questionable, we will see that, but the trustees of Ellen G. White Publications confirm that that is the general orientation and the main goal of this compilation, and we will see how this come about, especially in chapter 56, that is entitled Divorce. So we have 8 subtitles in this chapter, and we need to understand something. The subtitles are created through the trustees. So the titles are no part in the description of Sister White. So the titles are completely created by the trustees. So we have here 8 subtitles, and the one is counsels to one contemplating divorce, advice to a separate couple, to a hopelessly mistreated wife, to a deserted husband, still marrying God's side, although divorced, separation from an unbelieving companion, a wife urged to change disposition, not the marriage status, adultery, divorce, and church membership. So we have 8 subtitles that are completely creation of the trustees. Okay, second element that we need to consider here is that, with the exception of the last subtitle, all the rest are letters and manuscripts. So they are very specific content and is in clear contradiction to the general statements that are included in the foreword. So we have several letters. The other element connected with time, if we follow exactly how the structure is created for chapter 56, time chronology is completely out of the picture, because the first one is 1888, then it's 1902, 1907, again 1988, 1863, 1888, 1901, 1903, 1868. So it's not at all any consideration whatsoever about the chronological content based on the date. And that is something to be worried about. A second very important element here is that we have, under different subtitles, the same primary sources. For example, we have Counsel 1 Contemplating Divorce, that is letter 8 from 1888, and then we have subtitle number 6 with the title Separation from an Unbelieving Companion, and that is absolutely the same letter, is letter 8 from 1888. So when you go and read this chapter, the impression that any regular reader will take is that there are several cases, and that is a very difficult situation, but it's very deceiving the way how for different cases is presented the same primary source. So we have two cases here: Counsel to One Contemplating Divorce, Separation from an Unbelieving Companion, is the same person and is the same case, and is considered in two different sections. Okay, that is only one example. We will go in detail one after the other. So that is something that is to be preoccupied in the way how this chapter is composed, because time is not considered, context is not respected, and the general direction of the counsel or the recommendation is absolutely out of context. So that is something very concerning. Now, here in this other graphic, in the next slide, in chapter 56, instead of the subtitles, I have put the people that receive this message, okay? So, as I have mentioned, for example, Dr. Gibbs is mentioned 2 times under 2 subtitles, but it's the same case. We have Brother and Sister Nelson, it's an isolated case, but for example, about Harper, we have the first wife of Harper, the second wife of Harper, and the mother-in-law of Harper. We have 3 different letters here, completely separated under different subtitles and as isolated cases, when in fact here is presented 3 cases when it's only 1 case. So that is very, very concerning. And we will go now one by one. Let us go to the first one that is mentioned. It's not the first in the chronological order, because in the last part of the presentation, we will have the chronological order according to dates, not according to the content that is presented. So the first subtitle presented is about Dr. Gibbs, He's a member of the church, he's a doctor, and collaborated in several clinics and medical institutions of the church. And he had a problem because he have a wife that is not from the church, is an unbeliever, is no member of the church. So he is the only one member. So he was considering seriously to divorce her. And Sister White wrote to him several times. And this letter 8 from 1888 is very extensive. And that is the reason why in this chapter about divorce and Adventist home is divided in 2 sections under 2 different cases. And that is very sad to confirm. That gives the impression they are 2 different cases when it's absolutely the same. And the reference are exactly the same. So let us read, because of time, only one of this section. If the wife is an unbeliever and an opposer, the husband cannot, in view of the law of God, put her away on this ground alone. In order to be in harmony with the law of Jehovah, he must abide with her unless she choose of herself to depart. So the wife of Dr. Gibbs was not only an unbeliever, but she was also an opposer of Adventism. And probably the life of Brother and Dr. Gibbs was extremely difficult. And Sister White described us here when he said, he may suffer opposition and be oppressed and annoyed in many ways. He will find his comfort and his strength and support from God, who is able to give grace for every emergency. He should be a man of pure mind, of truly decided, firm principles, and God will give him wisdom in regard to the course which he should pursue. Impulse will not control his reason, but reason withhold the lines of control in her firm hand, that last shall be held under beat and brightly. So this case of an unbeliever wife and an opposer wife is the first case that is presented in this chapter, when clearly it's not connected with divorce. The divorce never took place in this moment, at this time, in these circumstances. Of course, he was considering this option, but Sister White made him absolutely clear it's not according to the will of God. So let us go to the second case that is presented. And it's a letter directed to both spouses. So it's Brother and Sister Nelson. So here is a problem because both of them separated. And they don't live together for long periods of time. And they were considering to apply for divorce. So Sister White writes to them and says, my brother, my sister, for some time you have not been living together. You should not have pursued this course and would not have done so if both of you had been cultivating the patience, kindness, and forbearance that should ever exist between husband and wife. So they have some character issues. For them it was difficult to coexist and to live together. And Sister White say that was a mistake to separate because then you cannot find a solution or try to collaborate and develop these virtues of conversion that is given by the Holy Spirit. So she encouraged both of them to come together, to try to harmonize their lives together, and under no circumstances proceed with any divorce that will be completely against the will of God. It's no reason for that. So that is a case for separated spouses. Let us go to the third case that is presented, and is brother and sister Harper. And in fact, we have three primary sources. They are three letters. But the first element that we find here is that all three are considered as different cases, because I don't know the names of the recipients of the letters. So a regular reader will never figure out that they is the same subject and involve the same people, and they discuss about the same subject. And I find that's very, very unwise. To use a primary source that have in common a subject and the same characters involved in the situation, and with purpose. They are located in separate sections of the chapter under different subtitles as the situation is different. And it is very, very confusing and very disappointed that this presentation is that in this way when you read this chapter. But here the problem is that Harper is eunuch. So it's a problem of a eunuch husband. So he married the first time, he divorced, and he remarried a second time. But the problem existed because that was a biological issue. So when you read the completely set of letters, here I only mentioned 3, but I have counted until 9 letters. Probably they are even more that are only sectional or notes in the diary of Sister White, or even part of them are distributed in several books as a compilation. But what she clearly stated is that in the same way as the other 2 cases, they are very specific circumstances. One is an unbeliever wife. The second one is that both members of the church separated because they cannot suffer to live together. And that is an open transgression of the purpose of marriage. And Sister White explained that clearly. The third one is another very specific and not common issue, and is that this brother Harper is a eunuch. And that is completely out of context in the chapter because it's not mentioned in any case. And I wish to read only one section of it. I cannot see what more can be done in this case. And I think that the only thing that you can do is to give up your wife. If she is thus determined not to live with you, both she and you will be most miserable to attempt it. And as she has fully and determinedly set her stakes, you can only shoulder your cross and show yourselves amen. So here is again, Sister White speaks that this is a very particular case, and what she does is give a recommendation considering the extreme tragical condition of both spouses by the first and the second marriage. So, and she clearly said, I cannot see what more can be done in this case. So for her, it's a closing chapter. But the case is eunuch husband. That is completely eliminated from the context that is in this chapter of Adventist Home. Now we go to the fourth case that is presented, and it's about Sister Jones, or what is called the Monterey case. And the situation is a little bit complicated by the case that the husband of Sister Jones is member of the church, but is a very intemperate husband. So he fall in several vices like drinking and card gaming and tobacco several times, even if he was rebaptized and committed again to be faithful. So in this process, also the elder of the church are involved in this process, and a romantic relationship emerged between Sister Jones and this leader of the local church, and become extremely difficult, the situation. And Sister White expressed herself not only the concern, but the clear rejection of this appearance of evil that Sister Jones, with the elder of the church, and the isolation, rejection, abandonment of the legal husband of Sister Jones. Let us read only a short paragraph here. It's an extended manuscript number 1863. A woman may be legally divorced from her husband by the laws of the land, and yet not divorced in the sight of God and according to the higher law. There is only one sin, which is adultery. And that was not the case. So Brother Jones was never unfaithful to his wife. But his wife was tired of the constant failure of her husband through alcohol and tobacco and games. So she gave up and decided to establish this relationship with this other brother in the church that was also the leader of the local church. And Sister White was absolutely clear on this point. It's no acceptance in any circumstances. So that is the fourth grace, and that is the intemperate husband. Let us go to the fifth case that is presented here, and is Sister Clairley. And Sister Clairley was considering divorcing her husband because he was very authoritative, very cruel toward her. Today we will call like, we don't have proofs of physical abuse, but from the letters you can see that probably was verbal abuse, emotional abuse, in a very extreme development of cruelty from the side of the husband to the wife. So the sister was clearly thinking about divorce in this case. So Sister White wrote to her and says, what is very significant here is that, again, if it's not a case of adultery, she cannot be legally in front of God divorced and approved by him. Let us go to the case number 6 that we find here, and that is Sister A.G. We don't have the completely name, only the initials. And that is a very interesting element that is presented here in this chapter of Adventist Home, because even if all the others were letters, even one is a manuscript but is in the form of letters, that is the only exception related with the content. That is an article in the Review and Herald from 1868, from March 24th. And that is an article that Sister White, with her husband, they wrote. But it's not an article in the literal sense. It's an answer. One section of the Review and Herald have question and answers, where people, readers, interesting souls, and members especially, they write questions because they were subscribers of this magazine. And in the last section of the Review and Herald, always they selected some of the questions and published the answers. So that is this specific case here. So, and that is adulterous husband. It's the only case from all the other 5 that somebody commit adultery. And here was a consultation. Okay. Is she forced to divorce him, or if she decided not to divorce him, can she somehow help him, or can he be again included in the church, can be received as a member? So there are several questions, and in the last section of this answer, there are several key elements, and I wish that in a next opportunity I can research together with you in another seminar, maybe, these 15 articles of the Review and Herald. This is only one of the cases. And again, it's not a principle what is presented, because I only mentioned here one section and say, in regard to the case of the injured sister AG, we will say in reply to the question of Anonymous that it is a feature in the cases of most who have been overtaken in sin, as her husband has, that they have no real sense of their villainy. So again, it's not a principle here. It's a very specific case. And from all the cases presented, it's the only case that involves adultery. And in fact, the wife don't want it to divorce. And that is really interesting. So it's very concerning that this chapter of the Adventist Home could completely alter the questions, the letter, and even the manuscripts and the articles to provoke and give the impression of something that is completely isolated from the original context. So let us do something very interesting. Now, in chapter 56 about the divorce, we have seen at the beginning the subtitles, the personalities involved in the cases. And now here in this new graphic, you will see the way how they are presented that is not connected with the chronological order. For example, the first case that is presented is Dr. Gibson in two occasions as two separate cases, and the date is from 1888. But the oldest reference that we have is for Sister Jones, but occupy the subtitle 5, and that is from 1863. And that needed to be the first case under the correct subtitle, and that is absolutely missing here. So then in the correlation of the subtitles, we have Brother and Sister Nelson, but that is from year 1902. So following the chronological order, the next in the list that need to follow is Sister AG, this reference to the Review and Herald in 1868. And please, when you consider the dates, don't forget to consult the first presentation to know exactly the resolutions that were implemented at that time. And this completely changed the picture and the right understanding, and avoid any violation of content and limited the level of interpretation when the historical context is considered. So we see here that 3 reference was given also for Sister Harper, first and second wife, and Brother Harper, and in different periods of time. For example, we have the first reference to the case of Harper in 1907, the first one. Then come another one, 1888, and very far on, almost at the end, another reference to 1903. It's like 2 different cases, and because we know that it's the same case, even it's not connected with the correct development of the events, because it's not in the chronological order. So it's a completely disruption of the reality that is presented here. So it's clearly that time, context, and content is completely disregarded. Now, if we will put everything in the correct order, need to look as the graphic that you see in front of you. The first case, that is number 5 in the article, but needed to be first according to the chronological order, is from 1863 and present the case of an intemperate husband. Number 2 case, that stayed at number 9 in the subtitles, is from 1868, is Sister A.G., and is the case of an adulterous husband. Then the third one is Dr. Gibbs, mentioned 2 times, and is related to the incredulous wife or unbeliever wife, 1888. Then we have in chronological order, number 4, sister and brother Harper and mother-in-law as a eunuch husband in 3 different references, and that is the correct follow-up, 1888, 1903, and 1907. And case number 5 is Sister Kerlin, related with the problem with the authoritative husband, 1901. And brother and sister Nelson, separated spouses that appear in the second cases, when in reality, chronologically, is case number 6 from 1902. Only while doing this work in this emblematic chapter, we find elements that really disturb a very conscientious reader, because it's an open violation of content, context, and time. It's even a repetition of partially same primary sources assigned to different cases. So that is an open mistrust of the content. And the other very important case, because we have 6 cases, if we put it in the chronological order, they are all of them distributed in several books. So you get the impression there are so many cases, there are so many circumstances, there were so many irregularities. In fact, you have these cases in the most common books compilated after 1915, but they are exactly these 6 main cases that are structured here, that is connected with this specific case of marriage, divorce, and remarriage. And it's very important for us that we also consider in a future seminar these 15 articles of the Review and Herald that will be a revelation, an open eyes about the real situation when we put all the 3 elements together. So resolutions of General Conference, a statement of Sister White, and public paper of the church. And all 3 together will bring to us a completely understanding about the reality, and will avoid all interpretations, full assessments that are done related with this subject. So may the Lord help us to trust the principles of the Bible in the declaration of Jesus Christ as a fundamental and final word. Is my wish and prayer. Amen.